All right, so let's start with coalitions. Yesterday, Tshwane Mayor Randall Williams announced his plans to resign at the end of this month. He says it's for the good of the DA-led coalition running the city, but of course it was also likely to avoid today's planned motion of no confidence. At the same time, the Auditor General's report on Pretoria is not pretty, an adverse audit finding for the 21-22 financial year. So what next for Tshwane and other municipalities facing coalition instability? I'm joined in studio by political and elections analyst Wayne Sussman. Hello, Wayne. Thank you so much for coming into studio to try and find some sense in all the craziness that's happening with these coalitions. Let's start with Pretoria. It is the capital. He's been mayor in Tshwane since 2020. He says he inherited a 4 billion rand deficit from the previous government. But opposition parties and even some within the coalition are saying that he must go because of that current adverse finding by the Auditor General. Do you think it's right he goes?
Yeah, so Randall Williams didn't, obviously the opposition parties like the ANC and the EFF didn't have faith in him, but he was also losing faith, as you said earlier, lost faith of his key coalition partners. Action SA had serious questions, other coalition partners had serious questions about his ability to steer the ship around. And I think some of the problem of Randall Williams' legacy is that he battled to communicate how he was trying to turn the ship around in Tshwane. There were all these adverse findings against him, and residents of Tshwane were not clear how Randall Williams was going to lead the city forward, create better conditions for job creation, create better conditions for service delivery, and that's why I think we reached this point yesterday.
All right, so he, as mayor, just really didn't make the inroads he needed to, even though he was delivered a difficult hand. He seems to have lost faith across the board. So now a new mayor needs to be chosen. The Action SA was explaining that the DA will then field a candidate, but then they have to float that name with their coalition partners. Do you expect at this point to see some of the DA's coalition partners say, look, you've had your chance for a DA mayor, give us a go?
If we look around Gauteng, and we're going to get to Ekurhuleni soon, but I think the opposition's control of Ekurhuleni, its days are numbered. By opposition, I mean the DA-led administration.
Yeah, let's be clear, because it's changing all the time.
The current DA-led administration, Ekurhuleni, is certainly living on borrowed time once the ANC and EFF finds each other. When we look at the city of Johannesburg, the economic powerhouse, we know that the DA and Action SA and Freedom Front have lost Johannesburg. So all what they have left from a metro perspective in the northern part of South Africa is Tshwane right now. And although the opposition, there's been a lot of infighting and bickering, they understand it's about the opportunity to show residents in Gauteng that this is the alternative to the ANC, this is the alternative to coalitions of chaos. And one of the interesting things which I want viewers to remember from the Tshwane results in 2021 is, yes, the DA went into the 2016 elections as the largest party, but lost a lot of ground. However, although they lost a lot of ground, unlike Johannesburg, unlike Ekurhuleni, they actually have a stable, relatively stable coalition with Action SA, who they can do business with the Freedom Front, with the African Christian Democratic Party and one or two other parties. So to answer your question, I think all of those parties I've just mentioned realize that it's about now, it's about turning Tshwane around, but also about Gauteng in 2024. And they are going to lose Ekurhuleni. They have lost Johannesburg. They need to find each other to make Tshwane a success, or otherwise they're giving the ANC and the EFF an opportunity to show that this is yet another coalition of chaos.
Do you think it'll be another DA mayor, or do you think you might see a compromise within that coalition? Because one of the ongoing criticisms of the DA, and this has come from Action SA, you're arrogant, you act as if you own the place. You're in a coalition.
I think it will be from the Democratic Alliance. Maybe Action SA will say we want another portfolio position in the coalition, but I do think it will be from the Democratic Alliance. They are far bigger than Action SA in Tshwane. and Action SA will also want to make sure that they also are supporting a mayor who can lead the city to new heights, because Tshwane, there's a lot of disappointment and disillusionment in Tshwane right now.
I can well imagine. And also the streets of the city, of the capital, are not looking good. They're not looking good in Johannesburg either. And we've seen residents in Ekurhuleni, in Gauteng, protesting on the streets for days, saying we haven't had power. They're putting that blame squarely at the door of the DA. We've seen the Speaker, he's gone to court, he's won back his position. Tanya Campbell is the mayor in Ekurhuleni, the DA mayor. But for how long do you expect that all to come tumbling down?
Well, it's key for the ANC and the EFF to find each other. And I think with Deputy President of the ANC, Paul Mashatile, there's a very good working understanding with the EFF. He's someone who the EFF can do business with. However, and this I think is emblematic of the unique political environment we find ourselves in. Here is the new leader, the new deputy leader of the ANC, who's very soon going to most likely become the deputy president of South Africa, who's key to bringing the EFF towards the ANC in Gauteng and KwaZulu-Natal. However, just a few days ago, as we saw live on ENCA, the same party who the ANC is dependent on now stormed the stage where the recently re-elected leader of the ANC, the president of South Africa, was making an address. So how does the ANC find the EFF? When they can sort those things out, I think we'll see an ANC mayor in Johannesburg and an EFF mayor in Ekurhuleni. But as you saw on Thursday during the State of the Nation address, they have a while to go.
Yeah, and the pot shots keep coming. We saw the SONA debate today. It's flying thick and fast between the EFF and the ANC. So it remains to be seen whether those compromises can be made. So in Gauteng, I mentioned, which is part of, it falls under the city of Ekurhuleni, the residents on the ground are saying since the DA started running this coalition, our services have deteriorated. Now, some would say, you see, that's the political influence of the ANC telling people on the ground to cause chaos. Someone like me will look at that and go, these poor people haven't had electricity. That doesn't seem fair at all. How do we judge how much is political game playing and manipulation, and how much is, in the city of Ekurhuleni, the DA actually not doing the right thing? I mean, Tanya Campbell came under a lot of criticism when there were riots for not actually going to meet the people timeously.
Correct. And to be the leader and mayor of a metro, these are very large businesses, these are very large institutions. I want us to think about it like that. You need great people running these cities across South Africa, the metros. And not only do you need great people, you need relatively stable coalitions. And Tanya Campbell from day one hasn't had a stable coalition. She's been reliant on the support of parties who do not sit in that coalition. That's why you even find yourself in the situation where coalition partners like Action SA walked out of the coalition. So if you don't have a stable coalition, if you're not always up to the challenge of dealing with all areas of your metro, like Gauteng Township, you are going to be found wanting. And that's why when the DA and its coalition partners found itself in this maybe unenviable or possibly enviable position where they were in control of Ekurhuleni after local government elections, they needed to think very hard of how do you communicate successes and challenges to all residents of the city, not just those who voted for us. And that is why, whether it's Ekurhuleni or many parts of South Africa, people are having negative experiences of coalition governments.
This is it, and it does come down to the residents on the ground, because we are looking at how the politicians are running our city. Here in Johannesburg, Mpho Phalatse is out. We have what is sometimes called an interim mayor in Tapelo Ahmed of the Al Jama'ah party. But this issue that for me is very telling, when the DA coalition was running the city, they kept trying to pass this 2 billion rand loan so that they could keep the city running. Now that it's changed hands, this 2 billion rand loan is still required, and there's a sense that the very same people who stopped it, who blocked it, are now going to approve it. Now that would be surely very cynical politicking at its worst, because surely to the detriment of the people of the city. Is that the sort of thing that parties really need to think long and hard about as we head to the 2024 elections, where citizens are fed up with bad service, they're fed up with empty promises, and they're fed up with politicking.
Correct. When we look at local government politics, we are often caught up in the theatrics of emotion of no confidence, of this mayor being booted out, of this mayor having to rush to the court to remain in office. We need to focus on consistency of the way parties vote, of what the parties promise voters, and whether they honour those promises. If you are in opposition and against a 2 billion rand loan, and then come in a few weeks later and demand that 2 billion rand loan, that's inconsistency. And all parties need to be held to account for the way they vote, for the promises they make to voters, because otherwise, when it comes to 2024, the voters are going to hold them to account and not be very satisfied.
Quick one, and a final one. Of all the parties involved in coalitions, has any party stood out for you as being quite honourable and trying to do the right thing?
No, it's very, very hard. I mean, I have to be brutally honest. No. I mean, you've seen that parties like the African Independent Congress are loyal to the ANC, seen parties like the Freedom Front remain loyal to the DA. I think coalition partners, big and small, need to think very carefully. Yes, it's about the now. It's making sure that where you are currently in government, that you improve your services, that voters on the ground who live in those cities can see a positive change, and that they have an eye on 2024, that if you don't do the basic services, if you don't improve your service delivery, you are going to be punished at the polls in 2024. So there needs to be a kind of maturity which we are not currently seeing in our politics. Coalitions are here to stay, and they need to work better for all residents.
And they need to start thinking very quickly, very cleverly, for the good of the people, because 2024 is not that far away. Wayne Sussman, thank you so much for coming into studio to chat to us. Political and elections analyst Wayne Sussman there.